y'all doing, Shuffle Squad? I hope you're doing well. Now, with Silver Tempest coming out very soon, I wanted to take a look at some of the decks in Japan and see how they're doing, just so I can show you some of that spice before I get cooking. And blimey, Lugia's doing bits, bro. In 3 Major League tournaments, it took at minimum 2 of the top 4 slots. So we got the City League Saitama, where it took 3 of the top 4 slots. You got City League Tokyo, where again, it took 3 of the top 4 slots. And then City League Kanagawa, which it took 2 of the top 4 slots. So we're going to be taking a look at those lists today to see what is going on, what's the meta with this deck, and how are people choosing to play it. It's pretty interesting, I'll say that for sure. Now, before we get into the decks here, I want to talk about the sponsors for the Shuffle Squad. We have PTCGO Store using the code TSS5 for 5% off on the site if you want to buy yourself some codes. Of course, fantastic when you're trying to get ready for the new set or when the new set launches, and you can go ahead and grab yourself some cheeky codes. Then we also have PokéX Word, which is a Pokemon crossword website, and they also have the newly launched Guess That Pokemon. So if you have some free time and you want to improve your Pokemon knowledge and challenge yourself, definitely check out PokéX Word. Go give them some love. And then you got Atlas TCG with the TSS12 for 12% off store-wide when you are purchasing singles. So if you're buying IRL and not codes, this is the place to go. Use TSS12 for it's not 5%, it's 12%. Get that right, shortly. 12% off store-wide. There we go. And finally, we got the Patreon, which is TSS Win. If you want to look into some extra content, articles, anything down that line, and you want to directly support the Shuffle Squad, then check that one in the description as well. As I said, all of the links are in the description, so check them all out. But without further ado, let's go into the video. So we're going to start off here by looking at the Kanagawa regional. It's not regional, it's the City League, you fraud. The City League Championship. So this is the second place Lugia VSTAR deck. Now, the biggest card in this deck has to be, for all of them, has to be the Archeops. The Archeops is literally the key to the deck. Lugia simply brings it out. So what does the Archeops do? Well, the Archeops allows you to accelerate 2 special energy from your deck into play. No downsides, which is just filth in and of itself. And I know it's a stage 2, but that's what the Lugia's for. With the Lugia's V-Star power, you can use its ability, assemble star, put up to 2 colorless Pokemon from your discard pile, regardless if it's stage 1, stage 2, doesn't matter, and just throw it straight onto the bench. So of course, that's how it's doing it. All we got to do is get the Archeopses in the discard pile, and Lugia brings it out, and it's ready to start accelerating. And from what I can tell by a lot of these decks, people are going with the Lugia as the attacker, but considering Archeops can accelerate to anything, then you can put anything in the deck and it does the job. So this one decided to go crazy with the amazing rares. We've got amazing rare Yveltal being able to just straight one-hit KO anything in the format. And you can see how they tried to make this really hard to achieve with Yveltal's attack cost being ridiculous, like fire, psychic, darkness, and 2 colorless. But when you got Archeops accelerating or Aurora energies, the heat fire energy, which is in this deck, double turbo energies, it's not that hard to get actually out. So to have a card like this, I could just straight one-hit KO things is ridiculously nuts. So I can see why they play it in this deck, just to be able to KO big VMAX Pokemon that are about that they can't KO with the Lugia V-Star immediately. And then they got Raikou in here for its bench damage, being able to hit 120 to the active and 120 to the bench. We know how powerful that attack could be. And as I said, you could throw anything in this deck, so why not have that to your utility? Why not have a Raikou in there that can just swap some things up, you know? And I think the card that's going to be the most common in these decks is going to be Radiant Charizard. It makes perfect sense. What's great is you can use this Charizard pretty much at any point in the game. And, you know, as long as you get the energy on there, which isn't that hard because of Arceus, right? You can just go ahead, go Aurora or Heat Fire energy, double turbos here and there, and you're just doing a lot of damage. Now, you got to be a bit more careful because you don't want to reduce your damage too much, right? You want to still be able to hit that 250 range choice spell 280 in our format. I don't know if their format matches ours directly or not. I'm not 100% sure. I think it will come Silver Tempest. So regardless, I think that's something to take into account. But it's a no-brainer, right? A single prize are hitting that much damage that you can just charge up so easily. This is the greatest thing about this Lugia deck. The ability on Arceus is filth. Some other noticeable cards in here as well. You've got the V-Guard energy in here, which is also coming out in Silver Tempest, which allows you to take 30 less damage from Pokemon V. You can only apply it once though, so it cannot stack, which is great with Lugia, right? Because Lugia has 280. Throw a V-Guard on there, and then you you've gone ahead and brought it up to 310, which is VMAX range, without even needing to attach a charm or anything down that line. Freeing up the use for, as you can see here, choice belts and all those kind of stuff. So it's a really, really interesting thing. One thing that's definitely catching me with these lists is the amount of collapsed stadiums. Collapsed stadiums seems to be very, very, very common here. And I'm just gonna go on a gander, go on a guess. I'm assuming that's to block off things like Palkias and Mews and stuff from really maximizing their board, because those types of decks really love to do that. Another one here as well is Serena. Serena, they play 4 copies of Serena in this deck. Serena is so broken, and it works really well with this deck, because let's say if you whiff a little bit on the Lugia, you haven't got Lugia out and you need an Archeops and you have the Archeops in hand, you can Serena and discard some of those cards and draw up to 5 and just get the Archeopses out once you find that Lugia with ability. But ultimately, it is just a way to go ahead and discard the Archeopses to allow Lugia to come and bring it into play without requiring quick balls and ultra balls and stuff like that. So it's another effective draw that synergizes well with the deck. And also the main thing is it has a gusting effect for Vs. It is a boss's orders for Vs, which is ridiculous. Having a card with built-in boss and built-in draw is broken. So that's why you're going to see Serena a lot in this deck and a lot in future decks for sure, because most of the times you don't need to be gusting up single prizes. Now here and there you may need to, and that's why they clearly play the one boss's orders, right? Serena is ridiculous, and it's a no-brainer they've got that in here. Another few cards to note here, we've got these cards you'll see more regularly throughout the other lists. Powerful Energy, of course, buffing up that Lugia's damage output. Hitting 220 is good, but being able to go further, even further beyond, is ridiculous. And you can very comfortably get up to 1 KO ranges on a lot of V-stars in the format, so that's good as well. And of course, you've got Capture Energy in this one too. Capture Energy being able to just, search out your basics, getting your like Raikus and your Veltals and your Radiant Charizards out, your Gurus. What's really interesting actually is the stadium meta, I guess, that they're trying to deal with, right? They've got Pumpkaboo in here as well. They want to remove Path to the Peak a bit more here. That's probably what the Pumpkaboo's there for, just to help with those matchups, because of course removing Path to the Peak allows the Radiant Charizard to do its thing, allows Crobat to do its thing, and Luminion. Countering Path to the Peak is quite interesting. And it seems like a lot of the top tier in Japan are going with this style of playing. I haven't seen much Path from what I can tell so far. That's the second place list. Let's go to the first place. So the first place list, you can already tell a few notable differences. They don't play the Heat Fire Energy. They do play the Raikou though, and they do play the Yveltal, so it's still very similar. But they got Tool Jammer, which is very, very interesting. I'm not 100% sure what that's for. It obviously serves a purpose, right? But it removes choice belts. It will block off, you don't need to block off Parasols. It blocks off charms, blocks off air balloons and stuff like that. I guess it's useful in that regard. If there's something I'm missing, let me know, because I'm not too clued in on how things are going on in Japan or here. I can't think of any tool card that's ridiculously, that is just going to cut off this Lugia that I can think of. But they've got it in here, and it's done the job. They've gotten first, so I'm not going to criticize it. I'm more curious than critical, I would say. And again, the similar like stadium type count here, where we've got the 2 collapsed stadiums, and then you've got the 1 Pumpkaboo, so not much change from that second place list. For Serena, again, as I said, you're gonna see 4 Serenas in these decks a lot. No boss's orders though, which is interesting. I guess they just didn't need it, and that seems to be the case here from what we can see from this list. Again, this got first place, so this seems to be the trend of, it's just like get Lugias, get Archeopses, and just throw different waves of attackers that are just really hard to charge up. So it's really, really cool. Also, you notice the high energy count, man. They got so much energy, and it makes sense because when one thing goes down, there's no energy recovery, so you still need things to work with. Also very interested to see that hiding energy. The hiding energy is going to be great to allow your Veltals and Crobats to retreat, not only attack. And you'll see this more prevalent in other decks as well with Crobat. But it's, again, another way, just to, let's say, bust up your Crobat. All right, if it survives the turn, jump behind you, it's retreat the turn. You know what I'm saying? A lot more pivoting available just by that hiding energy. So that's pretty solid as well. So now we're going to get into the City League Saitama, where 3 of them got in the top 4. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the one list that got in the top 4, and then we'll take the look at the runner-up and the first place. So let's move. And here we are with another list. Again, very, very similar. We can see the trends now. The staple cards for this matchup, it seems to be Crobat Luminion is a must in the deck. Radiant Charizard definitely has to be serious for this deck. This one has kept the Yveltal, gotten rid of the Raikou, which is very interesting, and reduces Archeops count from 4 to 3, which is thinning it a little bit more. I think that's perfectly fine. I think the 4 Archeops it's understandable, right? Like, it's all about Archeops, and you don't want to whiff on prizes or anything down that line. Let's say if you prize 2, which does happen, then, you still want to have 2 available, and you pretty much want to see Archeops turn 1 anyway a lot of the time, so you can just get it in the discard pile and good to go. So I get the 4, but they've brought it down to 3 here. And one very, very interesting card that I really like in this deck is the Echoing Horn, being really solid. I mean, come on. If you manage to KO a Crobat or just some, you know, another V-Star, an Arceus or something down that line, just being able to Echoing Horn and Serena and just whack it back up and one-hit KO it with a Lugia is ridiculously strong. I think an Echoing Horn is a must in this deck in my opinion. Like, just being able to have that effect with so much gust available with Serena. They play 5 V gusting options, by the way, in this list, right? You got the 1 bosses and the 4 Serena. An Echoing Horn seems like a no-brainer, right? Just whack it on, boom, and there you go. Great late game winning play. So I really like the Echoing Horn. They start with a Tall Jammer in this one as well, so that's pretty solid too. And again, a very similar energy line. People are really liking the hiding energy, which I completely understand. It's not that bad in this deck as well. Just as I said, the pivot and retreat. Speaking of, I don't see any retreat options. I don't see air balloons, switches, anything down that line. There's no pivot apart from the hiding energy and maybe manually retreating. It seems like that's just not necessary for the deck, which is very interesting. I guess if you bench carefully and stuff, then you're fine. And if they, you know, try and boss stick you, then you can go ahead and just use Archeops to manually retreat something. So it's not terrible. And I guess it's not needed. It does make sense, right? Let's say they gust up a Charizard early on, then just charge it up and start taking KOs. If they gust up your Punkaboo, then just throw 1 turbo on it with the Archeops, manually retreat it. Gust up your Veltool or your Crobat, you got the hiding energy with retreat. Gust up Luminion, then you can just, again, Archeops for the 1 energy, may it be gift capture. By the way, this plays gift. I don't know if I did notice gift energy in the other list, if they did play it or not, but this one does. And then just retreat it. But anyway, gift energy, really, really good, right? Just guaranteeing a lot more draw. If they do take a KO on any of your single prizes that come out and take a swing that turn, you just draw until you have 7 in your hand, which again is really, really solid. And you can tell this deck kind of just functions without needing a consistent draw support on the bench, right? You've got Crobat, Luminion, your normal draw supporters, and I think gift energy is a really good shout. So I really like this list. This is probably one of my favorites so far. Now, this is where it starts getting a little bit interesting, you see. Look at this bad boy here. So this deck only plays the 1 V-Guard energy, which is very, very interesting. But here's one thing that's definitely to note. They play Zeraora, and I believe they're also playing Professor Burnett, which is very cool. So Professor Burnett just allows you to take 2 cards from your deck and throw them straight into the discard pile. So it's just direct, get the Archeops from the deck in the discard pile now. You don't need to search it and discard it or anything down that line. It's just whack it in there and get it in there. And honestly, that's not that bad as long as you have what you need in play. If there's a turn where you don't really need to draw cards or you're trying to set up the board a little bit more in the early games, then Burnett doesn't seem horrible. And of course, you've got Luminion to guarantee the search for that. So again, just as a one-off, it doesn't seem that bad considering you're trying to get the Archeops in a discard pile as quickly as possible. Also to note, they have Zeraora. This, of course, being able to just one-hit KO with a choice belt, the Palkia. So this one is respecting the Palkia matchup a lot more. And of course, they have Vacuum in here to get rid of like charms and stuff like that. So if they're trying to buff up the Palkia somehow, then you can go ahead and remove that as well. And also bouncing things like Path to the Peak down that line as well. So again, really, really solid. I like this one a bit better too with what they're doing with the Lost Vacuum. I do like that. 2 collapsed stadiums, 2 Lost Vacuums. That's 4 path counters. So if they path you, then you have those outs, which again is really solid. Although I still like the Pumpkaboo because it turns a quick ball or an ultra ball into a stadium bump. So, you know, it's tough. It seems like this list is very tight. Like, it's very hard to actually try and get your perfect list. I guess it's more about meta calling really, isn't it? But anyway, this one also plays that fire heat energy. I'm really curious about this heat fire energy, why they're playing it. Okay, it buffs the Charizard to 180. Is that particularly relevant in any matchup? It may well be, considering that they are playing it. But again, more consistent cards in this deck being your Yveltal and Charizard. They seem to be coming up everywhere, and I don't blame it. Right, so here we are with the first placement of the Saitama tournament. Now we have here is it the first place? Let me double check. I just want to be sure, okay? First time I've done a video like this. Let me do it. Okay, Saitama, beautiful. I'm trying to be all professional sounding. This ain't me. I'm doing my best. All right, so this one has Crobat V Max, respecting the Mew. This one is definitely doing. Interestingly, I'm seeing a lot of people, in the West building the decks with like Drapions and stuff like that to try and deal with the Mew. Whereas people in Japan are just like, just play your Crobat and whack a V Max in there. Sorted. You're fine. You don't need no Drapion. You can charge it up anyway. You don't need to charge up your Drapion. You got Archeops. Charge it up like it's nobody's business. And again, makes sense. So I like this one too. As I said, it's still very similar to the deck before. One thing, they're playing 3 copies of Serena and 1 Boss's Orders here. So they're reducing that count. 4 copies of Research, trying to be very aggressive in getting things in a discard pile. Again, you got the choice belts. And you're noticing as well, there's always a 4/4/4 set of Quick Ball, Ultra Ball, and Evo. It's all about just getting Pokemon out and getting Arceus gone. That's really what it's trying to do. And it's very, very streamlined as well in what it does, which is what I really like. And honestly, I cannot wait to actually build this deck. I'm thinking of building this deck in real life, like my first ever IRL deck. And just looking at these lists just makes it, Lugia. But yeah, nothing too different here from that second place list. Nothing that I can really notice. I think this one plays a 2V card. It plays a twin? Bro! It plays a twin energy. That's kind of nutty. I guess that's for the Charizard because it doesn't reduce the Charizard's damage output. So if you go for 2 Archeopses on one Charizard, Aurora, you could actually attach a V-Guard or a Heat Energy to it, I guess. I don't think that's a big deal. So that's 2, and then a twin, that's 4. So if they take 1 prize, you're coming in now with an attack of Charizard hitting 280 with a Choice Belt, and the turbo energy is not being put on it, and the damage output is not reduced. So the twin energy, I guess, allows Charizard to hit that extra damage, which is really, really interesting to see. They may have prioritized Charizard a bit more when playing this deck, looking at that twin, which again is a decent choice, right? But obviously that would just be leaning a bit more into the Zard because everything else here isn't going to really benefit from the twin. So that's clearly there just for Charizard. So they clearly leaned into that a little bit more. So that's really interesting. That was the first place. So bro, these decks are starting looking, they're taking shape in Japan and it's working. It's ridiculous. Let's go on to the next tournament. And it gets even more spicier. Okay, here we are in Tokyo. This is the top 4 list that we had in that league, and it plays a Regigigas, which is ridiculous. And again, it kind of makes sense. You don't need to play the Reggie's deck. Just rack a Gigas in there. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not discounting Reggie's. Reggie's still busted. But being able to just accelerate to the Reggie's and do 330 damage to VMAXs, again, ridiculous. And it utilizes powerful colorless energy. So if there's VMAXs going above that range, Regigigas don't care. It's still hitting it, bro. And that's nuts. Again, you're seeing the twin in here. Again, probably for the Regigigas and the Zard, which is really, really cool. Zeraora has come in this one as well, and one interesting copy of Dunsparce. So again, I do like the Dunsparce too, being able to just remove the weakness from that Lugia. So if you're playing things like, well, actually in a mirror matchup, Zeraora is actually a pretty decent tech in the mirror matchup, right? Because Zeraora does that, hits the weakness, and then of course hits that 110, and then Choice Bet 140, 1-hit KOing a Lugia, unless it's got like a V-Guard on it or something down that line. I guess that Dunsparce helps with that regard, and of course like Flying Pikachu and stuff like that. You know, Dunsparce is decent. How decent, I don't know just yet. If Lugia is dominating in the way it is, it kind of makes a bit of sense. If you're playing a Lugia deck that does have Zeraora, I guess you want to cover your back a little bit more. That does make some sense. It's got a Crobat V in here, no Luminium. So that's interesting. So no guaranteed supporter. So they're playing, I was going to say a higher supporter count, but they're playing 4 Marnie, 4 Serena, and 1 Research. So they're confident that they're going to get their Archeopses in the discard pile with an Evo Quick Ball or something down that line, or just Quick Balls and Ultra Balls more so than Research draw. So that's interesting. Also, I know I am kind of neglecting one card in this archetype, which is the Oranguru. Bit of a no-brainer though, right? If you're discarding so much, then the Oranguru is pretty good. And also Oranguru works really well with getting energy back into the deck from your hand to allow Arceus to Archeops. I keep saying Arceus. They're close, man. You know what I'm saying? To allow Archeops to accelerate. So again, a bit of a no-brainer. This one does play the 1 Path to the Peak, which makes sense as to why they probably cut the Luminium. They didn't want to lean too much into V ability or rule box ability, should I say. And that one, yeah, is really good for shutting down Mew, as we know, countering Duraludon if you come up against that, as I said before. So it's nice to see the 1 copy of Path to the Peak. Would have been interested to see like a Roxanne in here as well. I don't know if you're getting too techie there as well, but like just being able to have that Roxanne path play could be pretty solid in an Archeops deck where you just have a deck that's self-sufficient anyway. So I'd love to see Roxanne make its way into this deck as well, which I think it will once it hits the West, but we'll see. Now this is second place for Tokyo. This one plays 2 copies of Crobat, 1 Crobat VMAX. So really rely on that Crobat draw if they are struggling. And this, again, we've got the Echoing Horn in here. I love to see it, but no boss's orders. So they're using that Echoing Horn particularly for Serena's Gust. And you can see a card pretty much in the middle left next to that Echoing Horn, or left side of Echoing Horn, which is a new card coming out in Silver Tempest and is pretty cheeky. We're talking about Capture Aroma. So this has a very interesting effect. Flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, reveal it and put it into your hands. If tails, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, reveal it and put it into your hand. So it's guaranteed deck search. Obviously, it's either evolution or basic, which is a bit risky, right? Because sometimes you're gonna desperately need an evolution Pokemon. And at that point, you're better off having an Evo Incense in your hand. And at other points, you want a basic. At that point, you'd rather a Quick Ball in your hand. Is this something that's gonna see more play? I did burp, by the way, you probably heard that. Is this gonna see more play post-rotation where Quick Ball disappears? And it's gonna be a bit harder to get your basics out. You know, obviously there'll be Ultra Ball and stuff, but it's interesting to see this being used because it is guaranteed search, which is cool, but it's a gamble as to what exactly you're searching. So interesting, but I just wanted to point that one out. And in this deck, we don't see Collapse Stadium. We see Lost City. Okay. This deck's out here trying to deal with the singles, trying to deal with our edges, trying to deal with some boys out there that cannot cope when things get thrown into the Lost Zone. I do like it. I do like it. I like the idea. You got to be concerned about playing against Lost Box, though, with Lost City, because you're helping them get to that 7 to 10 cards in the Lost Zone quicker. So you got to be wary of that, but they just seem to not care. If the Japan format is different, then that's something that's just my fault, right? But if it's similar or the same, then yeah, they're just not bothered by the Lost Box. Again, copy a twin in here. They've got the usual, the V-Guard energy, the powerful energies. The must-have energies in this deck seem to be Power, Aurora, and V-Guard. And then like turbos and twins you can interchange with, should I say. And then you got things like captures and gifts coming here and there. So you've really got to pick and choose because there's so many good options, which again, that supports the archetype, right? The archetype is that good that it has so many good options that you can't even include in the deck, which again, just shows the power of Lugia. Really interesting stuff here. Good to see another variant. And honestly, this is like Arceus 2.0. Really is like Arceus 2.0. It is just Lugia with a bunch of different cards. But in this one, you can play basically basics. Basically single prizes. We're just playing bloody basics. Anyway, let's go to the first place now. Final list. Now this one doesn't play Yveltal, which is interesting. It's leaning more into the lightning typing and respecting Palkia far more, and also leaning into its bench damage of Raikou. Again, another Crobat in here, again for that Mew matchup. And speed energy, really interesting. Adding a little extra element of draw, which is really good. Obviously, if you just accelerate it straight from the deck, you don't get it. But if you have speed in hand and you attach, then that just gives a little extra boost of draw power, which is really solid considering, I was going to say considering this deck doesn't play Crobat and Luminium, but it does, with 3 Paths to the Peak, which is really interesting. So this one's trying to be really careful about when they play their path, considering so many things are shut off from it. The Charizard shut off from it, Luminion and Crobat are shut off from it. Obviously the Lugia is too, but you know, you're not going to play Path to the Peak until Lugia comes and does its thing, right? Because that's how the deck works. So you can't do that. So it's interesting to see Path to the Peak. 4 Choice Belt, bro. Yeah, this deck is very streamlined. It's very straightforward. It's not trying to mess about. It's got some text here and there, but it's very straightforward and just playing a lot of 4-offs and just trying to make it very streamlined, which I like as well. And again, it won that tournament, so again, it works. But you can see the overall trend for these lists. There's some definite staples. Obviously, it's the Lugia, the Archeops. You're seeing Amazing Rares come back, which is crazy. Everyone knew at some point Amazing Rares are going to be good. This may be the time where Amazing Rares come into the meta, and that's going to be really cool to see. Yeah, you got staples like Crobat, Luminium. These are cards that are almost just like must-haves in the deck now. Charizard is in every single one, which makes perfect sense. But other than that, it's really just moving around. Serena, 3 or 4 of in the deck as well, and obviously the powerfuls and stuff like that. So take note of those if you are looking to actually buy the singles yourself IRL, of what is being played in every single list. So you can go ahead and get them and then try and build your own list if you want to and go from there. But I am super looking forward to exploring this deck and just playing around with it and seeing what crazy combos you can do, just like I did with Arceus on my channel. It's going to be great fun. Lugia is doing bits all over the gaff, mate. Filth. But with that said, I'm pretty sure you're probably sick of my voice now. And if you are, then I apologize. Psych! My voice is beautiful. What are you talking about? Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks again for watching. And of course, do subscribe to the Shuffle Squad. Take care of yourself and peace.
The Shuffle Squad is proudly sponsored by Atlas Collectibles, the best place to buy any trading card game product online. Visit atlastcg.com and at the checkout screen, make sure to use code TSS12 to save an unbeatable 12% off your entire order. Atlas Collectibles will ship your product anywhere in the world, so make sure you're taking advantage of the 12% savings with TSS12. And if Pokemon is not your thing, don't worry. Go to atlastcg.com and see all the other amazing trading card game products they have there to offer.
The Shuffle Squad is partnered with PTCGO Store to provide our community with the best access to Pokemon TCG codes. They have codes available 24/7 instant email delivery, and you can save 5% off by using code TSS5. If you're a YouTube member or Patreon supporter, you'll have access to a special code that gets you 10% off. So what are you waiting for? Use code TSS5 today and save 5% on your next order of codes on any codes available at PTCGOstore.com.
Pokex Word, the best place to get your fill of Pokemon-inspired puzzles. New puzzles are posted every day, and they recently launched a new Guess That Pokemon puzzle, which is a ton of fun to play. Go check them out at PokexWord.com and be sure to follow them on Twitter for your chance to win a ton of PTCGO codes every month.
Check out the Late Night Series Season 6, brought to you by myself, Zach Lesage, and the Shovel Squad. We're going to be running a bunch of sick events for the Pokemon community, and they start on August 30th. So one thing you might be noticing here is that there's an EU time and an NA time. We have one at 12 p.m. Eastern, which works out to about 5 p.m. in London, and then we have one at 7 p.m. Eastern, which should help out a lot of players on the West Coast play in this event. That being said, we still have a lot of cool things going on. Expect similar prizing that we've had for other Late Night Series events. Expect better staffing, expect better tournament experiences, and of course we do have a stream going up for this season as well, and I will be streaming the event on Twitch. That being said, we have the whole season up on the Play Limitless website. Late Night 51 all the way through 70 runs until we hit the Invitational on November 5th. So check that out, sign up today, and support Zach Lesage Events and the Shuffle Squad. See you there.